Hello and welcome to Vlogmas number 11. Well, we are one Vlogmas away from the end of this, and it's been quite a journey, it's been quite the month, and today has been quite the day. It's very late, as you can see from the lack of any lighting other than the lighters in front of me and my Christmas tree. But it's absolutely fine because today's video is going to be something a little bit more chill, something a little bit more in line with the usual sit-down videos that I used to do at the end of the month or beginning of the following month. It's going to be reading wrap-up for the second part of my autumn. So a few Vlogmases ago I talked about the books that I've read basically in September, October, and these are going to be more like October, November and the one that I read in December so far. So let's crack on! One of the books I read during autumn was Let the Right One In. This was the book club pick for the month of October. I saved this, I've had this book for a year now, and I saved it for October, so for the spooky season, or what's supposed to be the spooky season, just because I thought it was going to be quite atmospheric, it was going to be quite scary, a little bit gory. So this was definitely gory. It had a lot of moments where I didn't want to read the book just because it was so much to take in. The thing is, yes, there is blood and yes, there is killing, and as I have mentioned in the reading vlog where I read this video, when I read this book, it does talk about vampires. So you would expect the usual vampire stuff, you know, the neck sucking of blood, the killing, the avoiding the light and all that. Yes, those are elements of the book, but the key part of the book is the friendship between Oscar, the male character, is this teenage boy who is a little bit overweight and gets bullied throughout his time in school, doesn't really have any close friends, has this really weird sort of codependent relationship with his mum that doesn't sound quite healthy when you read it on the pages. And then Oscar befriends Ellie, who is this young girl who moves into his housing complex. I was expecting something that had to do with vampires quite a lot, whereas this has mostly to do with the experience of growing up with bullying. I didn't particularly enjoy this book. It's a nice book, but it's a book that I know I'm not going to pick up again. I think it works better as a film because it has quite a lot of storylines that on paper either need more time, and this is already quite a long book because I think it's nearly 520 pages, so it's a relatively long book for a fiction book standards. But there are a lot of storylines that I don't think are fully developed. This would work really well as a TV series, or it would work really well as a film. There are in fact two versions of the film, but as a book it didn't quite do it for me. I would still say pick it up because it's quite interesting to read about this sort of weird relationship that these two characters create. But at the same time it wasn't necessarily one of my favourite books, and I know I'm probably unlikely to pick it up in the future. Next up we have a book that made me cry, and this book is Intimidations by Zadie Smith. Now you look at this book, it's really tiny, it's a collection of 6 essays by Zadie Smith, who is this British author who divides their time between New York and London. All of the author's royalties will go to charity when you buy this book, and the edition that I currently have in my hands benefits the Equal Justice Initiative and the COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund for New York. They were written basically from the beginning of the pandemic up until when the book was edited, which is I think June, because it does touch upon some topics that happened at the beginning of June. It is a book that really, it genuinely made me cry. I finished this book and I was tearing up. It was really powerful. The reason I think why it's so powerful is because I read it while still going through the pandemic. So it's not something in the past I can tell my children about or that I can tell my grandchildren about. It is something that we are currently living, and so many of the emotions felt by this person whom I've never met and whom I have very little in common with because she has a complete different background from me. She lives in New York most of the time. She is an author. She has a certain life. She has a certain family. But at the same time, you really see how universal the experience of going through something this unique and terrifying as a pandemic and seeing death all around you is very human, and there is that sort of common ground between all the people that go through it, whether that's the strange, I'm quoting examples from the book, the stranger that lives next door that has a really yappy dog, or, you know, somebody you meet on the bus that used to be your mum's friend when you were 5. It is quite special, and I would definitely say if you're going through a rough patch in this pandemic, because especially now at Christmas time, a lot of people are finding themselves on their own, maybe spending a Christmas they hope they would never have to see, maybe you've lost someone during the pandemic, I would definitely recommend picking this book up, because it made me feel really heard and really seen, and it sort of offered that relief in knowing that there is no answer to how this is going to end, there is no answer to when this is going to end, but at the same time everybody's in this together. And while we live it on different levels, because obviously there are people that are way more privileged than others, and others that are generally struggling to survive, there are some common fears that everybody shares. So definitely pick this book up. I know a couple of people that picked it up after I recommended it on Instagram, and they sent me messages saying that they teared up as well, so pick it up if you're struggling a bit. Next up we have another book that I absolutely loved. This is another book of non-fiction. It's a biography, and when I read biographies I sort of like reading biographies that have to do with specific point in time or specific characters that mean quite a lot to me. The book that I'm talking about is A Woman of No Importance, written by Sonia Purnell, and this is the biography of Virginia Hall, which was at one point considered the Second World War's most dangerous spy by Germans. Now obviously this is going to look at the story of this one woman, but it's really interesting to see a few topics touched upon in this book. First of all, the story starts before the Second World War, and Virginia Hall was incredibly talented, even though maybe school was not necessarily her forte. She was not top of her class when it came to like school, but she still managed to get a high education, she still managed to work for embassies and all that. One thing that I noticed is that some struggles that I face in my job, because I'm a woman, she also faced back in the day, and that really made me angry, but also made me seen, made me feel seen, because it's incredibly angering to see how little's changed in basically, you know, I was about to say 6 decades, but it's more like 8 decades. It's been 80 years since the Second World War, basically, and so little has changed. And then the second thing that I noticed is that the sort of resilience of this character was really fascinating. Somebody who didn't stop in front of adversities, somebody who didn't stop when they had a massive prize on their head, put on not by just anyone, but by the Nazis. So it's one of those personalities that I knew very little about. I bought this book because I think I was on Amazon buying some homeware items, and then this popped up as a recommended sort of book, and I didn't know anything about Virginia Hall before picking up this book. The only thing that intrigued me was the cover, and I definitely judged a book by its cover, and I had it in sort of my wish list for a really long time, and then I sort of gave in one day and bought it, and I'm so glad I did, because it's probably one of the best books I read this year. Next up we have the second installment of the Seasonal Quartet by Ali Smith. This is Winter, and out of all of them I think it's my least favourite. This is not because it's badly written, it's written just like any of the other books, so that means that the narration is quite unique, the punctuation on page is very different from what you would normally expect from a fiction book. The story itself though, I don't want to say fell flat, because it didn't. It's still sort of, if I had to give it a rating from 1 to 5, it would still probably be a 4 out of 5. But I think it was a story that wanted to do more things than it did, probably. We followed the story over the days just before Christmas and just after Christmas of 4 characters. 3 of them are related, one is a complete stranger to all of them, and they sort of end up spending those days together in this house in Cornwall. 2 of the characters are sisters, So they are related and they share a history that goes beyond what we see in these pages. We do get snippets here and there, and what we understand is that these two characters are incredibly different and they had a big breaking point at some point in their lives. It does have strong elements of magical realism, which make it a really nice and cozy read, but then as any of Ali Smith's books that have to do with the seasonal quartet, it can be read in very different keys. So you can go from the story itself of 4 people meet for Christmas, they don't get along, to this is a critique of British society, this is a critique of fake news, because a lot of this book revolves around the concept of fake information, fake memories, fake news, and I think this came out in 2017, 2018, I think. And obviously if you think about who was dominating the news those years, you'll see the immediate connection between this and fake news. And then next up we have the book that you've seen. Have you seen me read this book in parts of VLOGMAS? I think you might have, actually. Yeah, I think probably the first 2 episodes of VLOGMAS you saw me read this one. That's The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. I talked ad nauseam of this book, so I'm not going to go that much more into detail, but if you haven't seen the other vlogs, this is the story of Harriet. She lives in Mississippi. Her brother died when she was just a tiny child, and during summertime, together with her best friend, they decide to investigate the murder of her brother, and they are convinced that they can find who is the person that committed the crime. Throughout the book you see Harriet evolve quite a lot, and she discovers a lot of things about her family, herself, and the concept of understanding your mistakes. So that was interesting, but still, I've read the other 2 Donna Tartt books. This for me is just lukewarm and I don't think I'll pick it up again. I'll keep it because I have my tiny little Donna Tartt connection, but I wouldn't read it again. Well, that takes me to the end of this 11th installment of VLOGMAS 2020. As usual, thank you so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate the patience, because I know I haven't necessarily always followed the schedule, but at the same time I hope you enjoyed them, and I always look for feedback, whether that's positive or negative. As long as it's constructive, it's very welcome here. So give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up if you didn't, and if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, do let me know what you thought of them, because I would love to hear your opinions. But yeah, for now that's it, and I will see you, I don't know when I'll see you, it might be tomorrow, it might be in 2 days, so that means that you might enjoy a vlog on the 24th of December as you're getting ready to open your presents, or you might watch it on the 25th when you're either recovering from having a little bit too much wine in the morning, or you know, just as you're getting ready. So thank you very much again for watching. Have a lovely evening. Bye!